Just a second. Yes, we do record this session. Okay. So, hi, welcome everyone for joining us today. I'm very happy to see you all here. My name is Christina. I'm the European Programs Officer at The Wheel, and I'm happy to welcome you here today together with my two colleagues, Emma and Emily, and our very special guest, Damien McGlynn from Creative Lives. We have a lot of participants today, which is great and shows how essential and important our topic of today is: building an EU partnership. Partnerships are indeed essential to EU funding. And today we will show you how you go about finding partners and how you go about establishing a partnership at EU level. So just to let you know in the beginning, we will record this event and share the recording with you afterwards, as well as all slides, links, and materials. So no worries about that. Just to mention, this event is part of a series. We have already done 2 of those events for an overview of how EU funding works, an introduction to EU funding programs in general. You're very welcome to watch back the training we did in February. And if you would like to know how to go about designing your EU project, you will also find the recording of this event on our YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about building EU partnerships. And if you're interested in the process of writing an EU application, the event on 12th May may be of interest to you. So again, we will share these slides and you can just click on the links and then you find our YouTube channel or the registration page for the event in May. So where are we right now? Just to give you an overview, we already covered in the previous events how to do your research, how to consult relevant people, how to develop a concept note for your project, how to get buy-in. Today is step 5, building partnerships. And in the next event that I just mentioned in May, it is focused on how to write your draft, how to circulate, and how to submit it. So this is our agenda for today. First, we will look at EU partnerships, what they are and what they are not. Then we will share tips and tricks how to develop your networks and how to find partners. We'll go into very short breakout rooms. This gives you the possibility to exchange between each other about who you would need for your project. No worries if you don't have a project yet or an idea or actively looking for partners. This is only an exercise to get you in the right mode of thinking. After a short break, our special guest, Damien McGlynn from Creative Lives is here today, and he will tell us in his case study how they usually go about finding partners and how they work together once a partnership is established, because this is usually where the fun starts. Afterwards, Emma will talk about 10 very concrete steps for connecting with EU partners and how to initiate a project. And in the end, we reserve time for Q&A. Taking into account that we have quite a lot of participants today, we would like to encourage you to post your questions into the chat box. Either we answer them directly in the chat, if it's like simple ones, or we will answer them in the Q&A session. If you have a very individual question, we would like to invite you to write an email to our team. We will be able to respond those better there. Thanks a lot. But we will come back to all of them. We promise that. So let's start with a short poll. So we would like to get a sense of how much experience you all have in working with EU partners. This is really about European partnerships, so not the national ones on an Irish level. Please answer the following questions that Emily should put up now exactly. So how much experience do you have in working with EU partners? The possible answers are none experience, some experience, or lots of experience. So let's see. Not all I've answered now, but Just give it a couple more seconds. Okay. So do you see the results or am I only seeing them? No, we see them. Okay, that's great. So, okay, what you see is 70% actually have no experience yet. Some have experience and a lot of experience, only 4%. So actually this is good because this is why we are doing exactly this event today. Okay, so we will now have a very quick look at EU partnerships, what they are and what they are not. As you know, again, sorry, it's my mouse. I'm sorry about that. So as you know, partnerships are essential to EU-funded projects. With the exception of some very particular cases, there's no EU project which would not require cooperation among different actors and countries. So let's have a look what the benefits of this cooperation are for you and your organization. It is always an opportunity to learn and share, the exchange of good practices, to acquire new skills, to access new ideas and new knowledge for your organization. It is an opportunity to connect with and influence policy because EU funding is always connected to EU policy and to EU strategies. It is the opportunity to be innovative. This is quite obvious. If you bring different people together, different perspectives, this fosters better and innovative solutions. And it is always a chance to access new sources of funding. If you have participated in a new project, it enhances your credibility for potential new donors. It has a positive influence on your organization's reputation. So in conclusion, these are the long-term benefits of European development for your organization. But there's always a but. What are European partnerships not? You can imagine working in a team comes with many challenges, especially in multi-partner EU-funded projects. Building a team with multiple partners in a multicultural environment is indeed a challenge. Gathering different organizations on a transnational level might involve different agendas of the different organizations, which can be in conflict with each other. So it is fundamental for you to be aware that joining EU partnerships never should be an afterthought or inconvenience, a pure subcontracting or outsourcing of tasks. It is a relationship building on a daily basis and for a very long time span. So the entire process of a project can last a couple of years. So we'll be working with them very closely together. It is also not a tick box exercise. So a partnership needs to be patiently built to make this partnership successful and productive. And this takes a lot of resources, of time, and also, of course, of nerves. And they are never without risk. So with this in mind, let's take the very first step and check how to develop networks and how to find partners. We share now here our tips and tricks that we learned are the best methods during the past years. The easiest way, of course, is to use your existing contacts. If they may be here in Ireland, or if you have any throughout Europe, many of those organizations that you know of, those contacts, they may be active in EU projects, or they are connected to European networks. You can ask them, with whom have they worked before? Could they recommend someone? And a personal recommendation in this case can go a very long way. As I mentioned before, you will work for years closely together. So trust, mutual understanding are essential for the partnership. And if this is established via an organization who has already worked with them, even better. So this is kind of the first step. Look who's out there, who you actually know. EU networks are also a really good starting point. So there's an EU network for nearly every topic. May it be democracy, arts, volunteering, education, social economy, sports. Some are even dedicated especially to European civil society organizations and European activism. We recommend you to join those networks, to be active in them. It can keep you up to date, not only on EU policy in the area, but you get updates on funding and events, and you can connect with partners. You will get to know these organizations involved. And again, you have the snowball effect of finding then new organizations across Europe. So European networks, always a good thing to join. Then the most obvious possibility, you can go online, you can do some Google research. There are also partner finding tools, dedicated partner finding tools for EU funding programs. Just to mention, not all of them are useful or targeted, especially at civil society. A lot of them are across sectors, across a lot of countries, so they can be a little bit messy. Some are better than others. We listed some of them here. Again, we share the slides, so you can just click on the links afterwards. There are also partner finding tools for single EU funding programs. For example, I listed here Interreg Europe and Interreg Northwest Europe. They have their own partner building platforms. So you log in, you can set up a profile, or you can just search for already ideas that were pitched by other organizations, and they are looking for more partners. They already created an idea and a consortium around that. And also we recommend to join LinkedIn groups and Facebook groups, always a good possibility to meet people. Do your research means, in this case, to look up former beneficiaries. So you have the EU funding programs websites. They always list all funded projects of the last years. They list success stories. This will lead you to project websites. There you will find a list of partners who delivered that project, and that links again to their organizations. So again, this is kind of a snowball method, looking to see who is active in the field, who has done such a program or a project in my area beforehand. And then it's just a quite easy step to reach out and say, hi, I saw you did already this project. We're developing a similar project. Would you be interested in a conversation around partnership? And this can be a very effective method because they already know, they have been involved. And this also gives you a really good possibility because they actually, maybe they already have new contacts and so forth. So again, this brings you into contact with the organizations you are looking for. National contact points is another really good entry point. So we are lucky in Ireland to have excellent national contact points for nearly every EU program. So for example, LEARGAS for Erasmus+, or the Creative Europe desk for Creative Europe. They can be super helpful in advising you around your project and also to help you, maybe able to help you when it comes to partnership. Check out their websites. You will find the link to their websites on our website. So we have the EU funding guide on the Access Europe website. There is listed every program relevant to civil society. If you click on the program, you will always find a link to the national contact point. So this is also a really good place to start. And now with travel restrictions eased, you could also consider planning some partner finding trips to cities in Europe. So this actually is the only possibility to build a personal relationship and to actually meet the people that you could be working with for a long time. So there are a lot of EU events, often even partnership making events that you could join. Again, look at these EU networks that I mentioned before. Usually they list events, they send out newsletters. It's for events all over Europe. You can also search for those events online. It's definitely worth to invest some resources here, especially for this personal aspect of building up a partnership. Just to say, the idea, of course, of building a consortium can seem very daunting in the beginning, but it's really rare that you would build the whole thing completely from scratch on your own. We always do recommend to start as a partner, not as a lead applicant, especially if it's the first time that you are involved in a new project. Often, as I said before, someone has a project idea, already started to build a consortium and it's looking for another partner. So if it's the first time joining a partnership on EU level, this is the best way to learn all about it without taking on all the responsibility. So the last tool I would like to share for finding partners is, of course, our Access Europe Partner Database. Maybe you have heard of it before. So what we want to do with this tool is to make partner brokerage easier, especially for Irish civil society organizations. What I mentioned before, often these European, across Europe partner databases and matchmaking tools, they are across all sectors. This one is focused on civil society and on Irish civil society. So if you are interested in finding project partners from other EU countries, you can set up a profile. For your organization, you describe the focus of your work, your interests, EU funding goals, key strengths. You can add pictures, videos, and so forth. And the platform then gives the possibility to filter all organizations and to contact the organization directly. This is on the one hand an opportunity for you to showcase your potential And on the other hand, it is an opportunity to think about your funding goals and your European development plan. At the moment, we have more than 50 profiles on the platform, and we started disseminating the platform across Europe via our networks, via platforms, national contact points and agencies, individual contacts, social media. So it's really broadly spread. We are trying to bringing it in front of the eyes as many people as possible. So interested organizations can then easily reach out and contact you. So this is us. We have shared our tips and tricks on how to go about finding partners. And now we would like to know from you, how do you usually go about finding partners? We set up a Menti for that. So Emily will put the link into the chat. You can just click on it. And then there's a possibility for you to tell us, what do you usually do? So do you use personal contacts? Do you use online databases? Which ones do you use? Do you join events? Did you do before? Like which ones were they? So this is not only on EU level. You can also tell us what you usually do if you're looking for partners in Ireland. The idea here is to collect your ideas, and then we share the list afterwards, so that we actually have a collection. So we shared what we would say, like our tips and tricks, and would be great to for you to also share yours, and then we have a collection and share with you afterwards in the follow-up email. And I would give you 1 minute to put your ideas, your recommendations, and your tips into the chat. And I need to ask Emily if I need to stop sharing my screen so that you can share it with the results.
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, so what we see here is that, yeah, our good friend Google, we have relationships. Yes, we have networks. Okay, this is changing very fast. I'm trying to grab it. Using existing networks, as we said, talk to colleagues. This is a good use the stuff in your own organization. Word of mouth, exactly. So if you hear of interesting organizations, what do we have? Meeting partners on events, exactly what I mentioned. This is a really good, and now we actually can meet in person again. The Access Europe database, perfect. This is what we like to hear. Similar organization, ask the wheel. Yes, of course, ask us. We're here to help and support and trying to match you. Databases, conferences, exactly. Yeah, personal contacts again. Good, great. I think this gives a good overview of how you can go about and looking for partners. Okay, so I share again my screen, and now we would like to put you into breakout rooms. This is only 10 minutes. We recommend to use this opportunity to get actually peer advice. Even if you do not have a concrete project idea or actively looking for partners, this is no problem. As I said before, this exercise is really to get you in the right mode of thinking. We would like you to share in the room. So every person will get 2 minutes, your name, your organization, and who would add value to your work and project. So what is a special skill that you do not have yet? So for example, research, digital skills, training skills. What kind of experiences, knowledge, geographical spread are missing? Like what would add value to your work and project? Maybe, let's say you are building an e-learning module. You'll need a partner with expertise about digital learning because you are the one is probably being the experts for volunteering, and you want to have a volunteering e-learning module, but you're not the professional in building digital devices. So just to give you an idea what this is about. This is really about to give you time to think about the design of your consortium and who do you need to partner with to deliver the project. So as I said, you will have 10 minutes. You will be 3 people in the room. Everyone has 2 minutes. The other 2 people listen actively and then share their advice with this person. Maybe you know of some organization. Maybe you have heard of something. So use this time to really help each other out on this, how you could go about finding these partners that you need. I stop my screen for that, and Emily will set up those breakouts room. Have fun.
We might have one person in a room by themselves, so I'm going to move them.
That's great. How do you move them actually? Oh, you can move them. Oh, that's great. I see.
I just want to make sure there's at least 3.
Oh, that's a good idea.
In each room. Oh, so there's another one that's moved to 6.
So that, yeah, and 7 is alone actually. Maybe we can put him somewhere else.
Yeah, I've moved him now.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Emma.
No worries.
Okay, that looks good.
Okay, so we have 3 in the first one. Yeah, I just have to make sure. Oh, I have to move 1. We'll just keep an eye on them because there might be ones that are joining now. Perfect. Okay. Let me just see. I was going to check them. For anybody who's just joining now, I think a couple of people have just joined. We're just doing a breakout room activity, so you can relax for a few minutes until people come in from the breakout rooms.
And if you would like to join a room, it just started, so just let us know. We can also put you in one room.
Let's keep in mind these rooms. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I gather you might have been talking to me at the end of it. It just came through a bit delayed there.
No, there was just a couple of people who joined. We just put people into breakout rooms for a short activity. So we can put you in if you like, but I know you weren't there for the kind of preamble. So if you want to take a break for a few minutes while people are in the breakout room, you're welcome.
I'll definitely do that. You have to forgive me. I'm kind of on my mobile office at the moment, so I'm on the road.
No worries.
So yeah, I'll just join in when you go back into the group.
Exactly. It'll just be 5 more minutes. It's grand. Okay.
Thank you so much. All right.
No worries. And I can see a couple of other people message just saying that they're not in a position to talk. So don't worry if you weren't able to join a breakout room. You can just take a break for a few minutes, and we'll all be back soon. So take it as a bonus coffee break.
That's lovely. Thank you.
No worries.
So we're actually a bit early.
Yeah.
Should we do the break now, or should we say just Damien go ahead?
I think Damien can go ahead with his case study, and then we can have the break afterwards.
Yes, exactly. I think so too. I just thought that I messed up the agenda a bit.
No. I think it just went quicker then.
Yes.
It'll be fine. And Emma, that's absolutely fine as well. I can see a message from Emma there. Don't worry at all. We'll be back soon. So just grab yourself a cup of coffee or water or something like that. And we can ask as well if there's any key feedback from people when they come back from the breakout rooms, if there was anything that they...
Yes, if someone would like to share, that I think is possible. Totally.
Let's see. No worries. Okay. Just gonna disappear for 1 minute.
Sure. Hello to the one who just joined us. Just to let you know that we are right now in a breakout session, which is going on for about 2 minutes more. So just relax. Everyone is in breakout rooms right now, and we will continue the session in about 2 minutes. So everyone will come back then. Hello, welcome back. So people are slowly coming back from their rooms. We just wait some more minutes. Seconds. Okay, so hello. Everyone should be back by now. Yep, I see people coming back. So I just would like to ask if there's anyone who would like to share a key insight, something very new that you have learned in your groups. You're having the space right now. If there's anything that you think, okay, this is really worth sharing, it was really good, I got a good advice here that I didn't think of before, you're very much invited to unmute yourself and share it with the group. Okay, but I think you had it. I just so hope you had some really good conversations and had the possibility to exchange about this.
Well, I can share.
Yes,
share just
truly.
to take. So I got good tips in my group about Interreg Europe funding for networking and learning. I didn't know that about that funding instrument. I was kind of only looking into the regional ones, and then actually the other participants also said it'd be good to find like a good partner who's already, if you haven't done this before, who has already gone through it and has experience, and to be a lead partner, and then to kind of just follow along and build your kind of capacities to then put in a full application later. So that was a good reminder. Thank you, fellow breakout room people.
Oh, great. That's great. Yeah, actually the Interreg calls are open right now, and they have pretty good websites and also community platforms and partnership platforms. We will share them afterwards in the follow-up email. This is actually a really good resource if you're interested in this kind of funding. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I totally know that feeling. I have been on your side of the event so often. So just asking, Damien, we're pretty good in time right now. Before we go into a break, would you like to do your case study? Because we actually have some space. So if you would like to go and do it now, and then we have a break afterwards, would that be fine for you? Just asking.
Yeah, no, it's fine for me.
Oh, that's cool.
We could probably do another breakout room. We didn't get very far in our group.
That is good to hear.
Time flies in breakout rooms. It always moves quicker. But yeah, give me a sec here. I'll just
Yes, yeah, no worries.
my screen with you. So can you all see that? Yep.
Yes, perfectly.
Lovely. Okay. So you don't need to see that. That's just my title. So my name is Damien McGlynn, as you've heard. I'm the Ireland director for a charity called Creative Lives. That's what I look like in my front garden, in black and white, because that makes it look a bit classier. I'll tell you a little bit about who we are, because it's relevant kind of to how we work in a European context. So some of you may have come across us over the years. We used to be called Voluntary Arts Ireland. We changed our name last summer. We spent 30 years with a bad name, so now we've got a better one. And we think Creative Lives sort of sums us up a little bit better. And Voluntary Arts Ireland is leading to lots of confusion about what we do. We've clarified that with the line you can see there. Our purpose is to celebrate, encourage, and champion people expressing themselves creatively in their everyday lives and practicing their creativity socially with other people. It's a bit of a mouthful, but essentially I always say it's about people having fun, and we sometimes end up feeling a little bit within the sort of charity sector. People think, oh, it's not very charity, is it? You're just having a laugh. But we've spent a lot of time, I guess, on different projects and research trying to measure the impacts that those things have. And a lot of you will, working in the charity sector, you know the impact that those things have in terms of people's health and well-being, but also in terms of cohesion, communities, local economies. There's a huge number of things that come from that. But also we sort of argue that all the great work that other charities are doing is really to try and enable people to lead full lives, and that part of your life where you get to have fun and be creative is the part that makes it worth living. So we do think that's important. But all of that is kind of relevant then to how we go about our kind of work. So we have 3 strategic priorities, broadly around networks, about kind of well-being and social connectedness. And then the third one is around spaces. And this was something we came up with just before the pandemic. These 3 priorities, part of a strategic framework. The issue around spaces became very different over the last 2 years, but it's actually now come back to being a much more pronounced problem, a lack of available kind of community spaces. But the one that I've highlighted there is the first priority, which I think is most relevant to a lot of our European work. We do a lot of kind of advocacy work on a kind of a national level and things like that. The relationships that we build with other peer organizations around Europe has been really, really important to how we go about that in terms of gathering evidence, examples of work in other countries that we think we would like to see, adopted by government or local authorities, things like that here. Being able to draw on examples from all over Europe has completely changed how we go about that kind of advocacy work, but also in the kind of delivery work we do. We do a lot of what we would class as kind of pilot projects to try and demonstrate an effective way of working, and a lot of those are things that we've borrowed from peer organizations around Europe. So that's been really invaluable. To give you an idea of some of the things that we do within Ireland, I've listed some of our current or recent big projects. So we're running a program called Creative Places in Edenderry and County Offaly. And this is the 3-year creative placemaking program funded by the Arts Council. So it's very much about how we use arts and creativity to enhance the quality of life in a place that's basically been neglected, particularly by arts and culture funding for many, many years. So we're almost completed the first year of that program. Love to Draw Ireland was also a project that was funded by the Arts Council, and this is something that ran in Donegal, in Cork, and in Carlow, and it ended up being completely reimagined because of the pandemic. And it was about a similar thing about bringing people together to try drawing or re-engage with drawing for first time in a long time. And that was all about kind of health and well-being and the benefits of just taking the time out to draw what's in front of you, and it doesn't matter if you're good at it or not. And there was, you know, fantastic feedback from people of all ages from doing that. And then the other one that I've listed there was one that we did in partnership with Dún Laoghaire Rathdown Council through the Arts Office. And it was another creative placemaking project in an area called Ballyogan, just off exit 15 of the M50, so it's called exit 15. And an area that is obviously within one of I think the most affluent local authority area in the country, but an area that was really neglected and on the kind of peripheries of that and had a lot of kind of socioeconomic issues. We spent a couple of years there working with you know, a lot of people from the traveller community and other areas around that felt kind of marginalised and not part of the cultural life. They weren't connected in with the local authority and with some of the venues and different things. Didn't mean they weren't doing anything. We've always argued that people are active in their own cultural life. It's not always approved or connected with the state or the council or whoever that might be. But that's just to give you a flavour of the type of work that we do. And then in terms of what we've done in the past, I don't know if anybody else ticked lots in the poll at the beginning, because it only came up with a tiny proportion, but I classed us as having lots of experience with EU partnerships. All of these projects I've listed here are within about the last 10 years. So you can see we've done quite a few of these Erasmus Plus strategic partnerships. If you're not familiar with Erasmus Plus, it's kind of primarily leaning towards the kind of education side, and lifelong learning is sort of how it's phrased, I think. So when we talk about, you know, the reason I was giving you the example of the kind of work that we do, we're all about people trying new things, expressing themselves creatively, and doing that right throughout your life, not just for kids, not just for older people, but all throughout your life. So we managed to kind of fit that into a lot of the aims of the Erasmus Plus program, because it's seen as kind of an opportunity for lifelong learning, and their funding is often very interested in the social benefits that come from that in terms of cohesion and inclusion and things like that. So a lot of these projects have had that kind of slant to it. It's about tackling a particular issue or demographic. And they're also very much about kind of experimentation and learning and kind of research for us. So it's a way to kind of test things and test it in a number of different countries and then pool the findings of that. So ArtAge was focused on older people and about how we could have an impact in that kind of space. And then both Culture Guides and SPAR were very focused on rural areas. So Culture Guides was setting up this network of cultural volunteers in rural areas to try and signpost and connect up, because you don't have the same infrastructure as you do in a big city where everybody's very aware of where all the activity is and the big cultural hubs. And then Bridging and Boost. Boost is the current project that we're working on. They're both very much on the social side and very focused on those issues around social cohesion, social inclusion and things like that. Both of Bridging had a particular focus on kind of trying to connect across different demographics and build trust, which was a major thing that you might have seen in various EU programs. Is this idea of a lack of trust between people and institutions, people who don't trust people from different national or ethnic backgrounds, things like that. So the project was all about how do you use cultural activities to bridge those divides and build trust and cohesion. And Boost is kind of a continuation of that, that we're looking at. We're developing a benchmarking tool essentially for cultural organizations to self-assess how well set up they are to achieve some of these different social outcomes. And then once you do the self-assessment, you will get this tailored guide that isn't, you know, we're trying to be very clear that we're not doing a one-size-fits-all kind of answer, here's how you do the perfect project, but we're using the findings from partners across 5 European countries to give them some ideas, some principles of how you might go about some things, and some case studies of here's how one organization tackled this, how they went about it. And then in a slightly different way, we've also done one Creative Europe project, which was in the network strand. So Creative Europe has a couple of different strands, and one of them is in particular for networks. So we just completed that in December. It was slightly extended because of the pandemic, so it ran for 4.5 years total. And that was through our European network, Amateo. So we got funding to basically build and strengthen this network and to undertake various different activities within that. And then at the moment, I'm busy working on a cooperation project application, which is due at the beginning of May. So that's open at the moment, and we're working with some members of the European network, Amateo, on that program at the moment. So fingers crossed there that we might get some more funding for that in the next few years. Sorry, come back one. So it's worth talking about Amateo, which I mentioned there. Amateo is a network that we helped to found in 2008. So in lots of ways, when we talk about European partners and all of that, this is our go-to place, because this is a network that's very much for us and the work we do. And we helped found it because we started to encounter other organizations, a handful of other organizations who did similar work in other countries around Europe. I think there was a conference in 2006 or 2007, and that brought more people together. And then they said, we really should start a network. And we ran for almost 10 years with no real funding, just members paying a subscription fee every year, running an annual conference that somebody would host in a different European country. And then in 2017, we got the network funding from Creative Europe, which just massively scaled up what we were able to do as a network. So obviously this is a network that's very relevant to us. It won't be particularly relevant to a lot of you because you'll be in your own areas, but I know Christina had said earlier, there's a lot of European networks out there, certainly within Creative Europe, because they have a separate fund specifically for networks. You can go and see all these different ones. I was just telling somebody about the European Festivals Association. That's one that's relevant. But that will be the case across pretty much every area. You will nearly always find there will be a European network. And if there isn't, start one and then get some other people on board and get some funding for your network. But yeah, I won't really need to tell you too much about what the Amateo network does. In terms of what that means for us, some of this again has been covered earlier on in the session. So obviously, if we're looking for partners, that network that now has more than 55 organizations in it is our initial go-to if we want to find somebody. Even if, say, our member in Portugal or Greece, even if they're not the right partner for what we want, if we want slightly different skills, we have a contact to go and talk to and say, who do you know in Greece that maybe does this kind of social work or works with older people or something like that. So that network is just an amazing route to a huge number of people for us. I've listed two of those partner search websites, the ePale one and EU Partner Search, and I think there was the Up to Europe and a few others that Christina shared earlier. They're all slightly different. We've used some of them. The thing about them, I would say, is, we're listed on a couple of them, and we were proud to be the first ones listed on Access Europe when they launched the database last year. I was straight in there. But it does mean we get inquiries out of the blue sometimes, and it's always worth doing a little bit of research and trying to kind of find out a bit more. So we get some really random emails from people saying, oh, we need an EU partner next week. And you just think, God, this doesn't sound appealing. So, take your time, go through these, look into the work they've done, read up on their reports, their projects, find out, if this is really the right kind of partner, rather than just firing out like a load of requests through one of these databases. But I think more than using those, the way we would generally come across a lot of our partners is through things like conferences and seminars. I've been to so many more conferences over the last 2 years because they've all been done in this format. So all the European stuff, suddenly you don't have to go to Stockholm or something for a few days. You can join in. But also kind of if you're interested in a particular area now, it's quite easy to look up conferences and things that have taken place recently, and it doesn't matter that you weren't there. You can see the program, you can find the case studies, the speakers, presenters, things like that, and just digging into whatever the theme is that you're interested in, or who you might want to find, being able to find people who have done this kind of work and are kind of active on the European stage. It's really useful. Obviously, if you get to go to these things, whether it's online or in person, that's where a lot of those relationships build up, and we've established a lot of partnerships just through that, just meeting people at these things. So if something you're thinking about doing a little bit further down the line, do start getting out there now, and those kind of events are really the best place to meet those people. And obviously the other thing is previous funded projects. So this would be the case, of course, with any of the EU funding programs, that you can look up and see who's been active, who's received funding. That track record thing does seem to be really important, especially, you know, if you're coming in new, as Christina was saying, don't try and lead a project when it's your first time. It's quite unlikely you might get the funding, but find out who's already doing these things, and then offer to speak to them, join in as a partner. I should have mentioned at the beginning, our organization has always been a UK and Ireland organization. My work is running our Ireland operation. A lot of the EU funding we got over the last 10 years actually came into the UK organization. Now all of it comes into Ireland. And we're already seeing the impact of Brexit there, that we're very attractive because we've got a track record of European funding. A lot of partners know us. But, you know, the UK used to be the most popular country for partnerships of any country in the EU. And a lot of that, I had this experience that people just love having a native English speaker to proofread things. That's our most endearing quality, I think, is proofreading. But obviously people are now looking for other partners, because every project we've ever done has operated through English as the kind of language of meetings and the reports and things that we might produce. So there's a real attractive prospect now to offer yourself as an Irish-based organization, that will be in demand. So I would look at some of those partners that were in previous projects, and you will probably see UK partners in a lot of them up until now, and start seeing, could you fill that gap as an Irish organization? Could you drop in and be part of a future project? Just a little bit about what happens, obviously, once you get into the work. We've had definitely some good partnerships, and some ones that were a little bit more ropey at times. And it usually comes down to a couple of different criteria. So the kind of the good ingredients that I've listed there is, you know, reliable partners, people who you can trust, people who are experienced in these areas and European projects, clear roles, and then understanding of the project aims. Those, if you have those, things tend to work smoother. But quite often what you do end up with is, like I was talking about, somebody drags a partner in at the last minute who none of us know. They don't have European project experience. They're just a bit of an unknown quantity, and that can end up causing some difficulties. We've definitely had partners who joined a project and then just sort of said, actually, we don't know what any of this is about, and it's not really relevant. And they've dropped out really quick because they just didn't think it was suitable for them. But that should have been established, you know, beforehand, before they were signed up. So as I said here, making up the numbers, you will see this happening a lot in European projects, that people are just saying, oh, it'd be good to have somebody from that sort of sector, or it'd be good to have somebody from that part of Europe. And that can, it'll often just mean that you've not got a well-balanced or well-functioning partnership. You've just got 6 partners because you wanted 6 partners, and you will run into problems with that a bit further down the line. And that is usually due to the third thing I've mentioned there. It's a lack of interest or understanding. You have a partner who comes in and isn't really keen on the aims. They're not keen on the tasks they need to do. And suddenly you have other people trying to pick up more than their fair share to cover for that. So the things that I've identified as being a good partnership is definitely relevance. So if people are coming in, they've got to be relevant to what you're trying to achieve, whether that's that they're a very similar organization to yourself in another country, or they're bringing something that you don't have. And that's got to be key. You know, you've got to see where do they fit into what you're trying to do in the project, not just they're a good organization. Capacity is definitely a key thing. I think one of the notes there earlier that Christina put up about, it was an inconvenience, wasn't it? Yeah, so we've definitely had that where partners, they'll take on the project, but in reality, they don't really have the capacity and they kind of just want a bit of money, but they don't see this as part of their core work. It's just this added extra that, you know, they don't really want to do, but they just want to tick the boxes. So you do have to be careful about kind of understanding the capacity of each of your partners. Are they actually going to be able to deliver their part of this and engage with the project properly, or are they going to be kind of a bit flaky and this isn't high on their priorities? Working cultures is something that I've definitely learned a lot about over the years. Other countries around Europe work in different ways. Meetings are different. The way people speak to each other can be different. It's definitely interesting. And if you've not experienced that before, it can take a bit of getting used to. And I would say it's important. We've often had kind of a kickoff meeting at the start of one of these projects where we sort of try and talk that through, and we say, this is what we think is acceptable or not acceptable. And some of that is about how and when you contact each other, when you might expect a response. You know, I've gotten used to the fact that most of Europe switches off for the summer. We're always busy working away and they're all off for 6 weeks or something. They disappear. But I'm used to it now and I just expect that. So yeah, getting to know how your partners work is really important. And then a clear definition of the work packages, the timelines and the roles. This should all be in your application, but people should also understand that. The application is often difficult to understand. So you need to all understand what are your responsibilities in terms of the different work packages, what are your deadlines, what's contingent on other things. You know, it's basic kind of project management that lots of you will be used to, but you've got to make sure that everybody across the partnership really understands each of those things. Or else, you know, you'll end up running into these problems further down the line and it will get really, really messy and somebody ends up trying to pick up the pieces and keep the whole show on the road. So connected to that, I love this Homer Simpson line that he thinks the problem with marriage is communication, that there's too much communication. And that is something that I think it can go up and down. So in a lot of our partnerships, there's been issues with this, either that people aren't communicating in time or there isn't enough, or you get sort of bombarded and you get, you know, I've had inboxes full of long email chains that, you know, it's really hard to follow what's going on and it just makes you not want to engage with the project at all. So one of the things we've gotten better at over the years is trying to find the best way to collaborate and communicate across Europe. Obviously, a lot of this has become easier, I think, as people have adapted over the pandemic. We were always a very dispersed organization and did a lot of this international work. So we were used to working kind of remotely and collaborating in the cloud, things like that. But for others, certainly around Europe, this was new, scary territory for some smaller organizations and in some countries, and then others are, you know, incredibly skilled in all of this. But some of the things we've found to work really well, so Google Drive, I'm sure a lot of you will know that you can get the Google, whatever they call it, workspace for non-profits, I think it's called now. So if you're a registered charity, you can basically just fill in the forms, you get access to all of this. You get as much as you will ever need for free from Google, and you'll get your email, drive storage, all these different things. You also get some of the free Google ads and things like that that are a great benefit. But we found at the beginning of that Amateo network project, at the beginning of the 4 years, the person who had written the bid had written in that we were going to use this project management tool called Reiki, which I wasn't familiar with, maybe some of you are. And it was just, I'm sure it's brilliant, but it was so technical and so complicated and nobody had used it before. And it was just a nightmare. And for the first few months, we were all being told to look at it to find the information we needed, and it just wasn't working, and it was just stopping us from getting the project started. And eventually I convinced a few of the others, you know, we use Google Drive in our organization. I said, I'm sure a lot of people are using Google already for different things. It's much more familiar, it's simple, and it worked. You know, just having that shared drive storage where everybody could go to the one folder and they were familiar with how it worked, and then easing them into the idea of using kind of Google Docs and spreadsheets and things so we could all collaborate live on one document rather than people emailing attachments. And that was quite transformational for some of the partners we were working with, and made our life a lot easier. But it doesn't do everything. It's great for documents and collaboration and storage and all of that. But in terms of communication, again, in our organization, we use Slack. There's lots of other similar platforms like this. We find it quite good for that informal, quick questions, things like that. You can have separate little groups and channels and things like that. But you've got to find some way of allowing your team to communicate and collaborate as quickly and easily as possible. And I think we've all learned over the years that email kind of isn't the answer to that. It's great for some things and some more formal stuff, but if you want to work as a team, you've got to do that thing of trying to recreate, a collaborative office environment. And we've also used obviously WhatsApp and Signal. There's a few other things. What is it? Telegram, again, in different European countries. We were surprised that they don't use WhatsApp. It's not a thing. There's Viber as well in some of the Eastern European countries. It can be hard. You need to try and push people to all agree on one thing, but it's really worth it. It makes such a big difference when you know you can quickly get to everybody that you need to with a quick message, rather than emailing and waiting 2 weeks for somebody to dig through their inbox to respond to you. So there's my quick run through of ingredients of what we think works and doesn't work. I can definitely give you more horror stories, and I can also tell you loads of fantastic stories of, just getting to meet wonderful people. I often say I feel like I can now arrive in any European country and I have a friendly face I can go and see, which is just brilliant in terms of your own career, your future, whatever I might be doing in the future. I feel like I have great contacts all over Europe, and it's one of the best things about the work that we do. So I think it's been really valuable on a sort of personal and professional level. And as I said at the beginning, it's a huge part of how we do our work, and it's hard to kind of imagine our organization and our work without the input that we get from peers and the ideas that we've stolen from others. It's been, completely, it's core to everything we do, is that international learning, really. I'll leave it there anyway, and we can have questions there later on.
Excellent. Oh, Damien, great. Wow, you covered so many points, and you kind of gave it like a human face, like what I shared before with all your stories. So this was great. So kind of the good and the bad of partnership building. And what I actually like is what you said in the end, that it's about this relationship building part. And it's about meeting people and getting to know people and establishing those relationships and having a nice smiling face in every European country. This is great. This is what it's actually all about. It's about this European cohesion aspect. And sometimes you forget it about all these project management, all this administrative stuff, that it's actually about connecting to other people also. So thanks a lot. This was super valuable, very concrete ideas, tools. Thanks a lot for sharing this. Great. So again, if you have questions, put them in the chat, because what we will now do is we go on a break, 10 minutes, and we will all be back, I would say 11:15. And then Emma will share 10 very concrete steps on how to setting up those partnerships, how to manage them. And then we have the Q&A session in the end. So this is what will happen in the next hour. And thanks again, Damien. Amazing. That was excellent.
Thank you very much, Damien. It was brilliant.
Okay, see you all back at... So, sorry, Emma.
No, I was just saying we'll see people in 10 minutes then.
Yes, exactly. 11:15. See you all back then.
Yes.
We can start, I think, welcoming people back in now after the break. I think, can you see my slides okay there, Christina? Great, thank you. I can see your, your little video on the screen. So I think we can, are we at 1:15 now? We are. Okay, so welcome back everybody. And a huge thank you to Christina for steering us through the first half of our session today, very skillfully, and to Damien, of course, for that excellent insight into that experience of being a project manager and of putting together a partnership. I don't know if you could probably see me, I was nodding along to so many things there, because Damien was exactly right, and it was very similar to my own experience of managing projects. I started out as a European project manager before I ever kind of came to the wheel. I was managing a variety of different projects, and had that very similar experience of the relationships that you build as a project partner. You know, how it can be difficult to kind of quantify beyond the funding itself. Sometimes it's hard to quantify the impact that these projects have on organizations and how transformational they can be, and the learning that you get from them. And the fact that, you know, of course, there is a big opportunity now with, we often get the question of, can the UK be partners in projects? No, the UK is no longer eligible to be a partner in any of the European projects or the European programs, except for Northern Ireland is obviously qualified to be in the Peace Plus program. So that's the new Peace program. Some of you might have been aware of Peace 1, 2, 3, and 4 that have gone on since I think the 90s or maybe even earlier. So we're now in the stage of they've left behind the numbers, and we now have Peace Plus, which is the new Peace program. And so that obviously will, you know, it will allow you to partner with Northern Ireland, but none of the other programs will allow you to do that, except for there are exceptional circumstances where you can demonstrate that a UK partner is absolutely necessary to the project. In certain European programs, you can justify bringing in a partner from outside of the EU for specific reasons. If there is an expertise that you can demonstrate just does not exist elsewhere in Europe, and you need to bring it in, whether it's from the US or Australia or somewhere in Asia or even the UK. So, but you know, in general, the UK are no longer part of European programs, and so therefore cannot be partners. And this, I suppose, can be difficult for some Irish partners, because many of us, you know, they were our closest neighbours and they were kind of our go-to partners for many things. But it's also a huge opportunity because, as Damien said, we're now the main English-speaking country in Europe. There is still Malta, obviously, it's officially English-speaking, but we're the biggest EU English-speaking country in Europe at the moment, and very attractive partners. So it's a good time to start getting involved as partners in projects for the first time. And as well as that, we're relatively near the start of a new multi-annual financial framework. So for those, that's a bit of EU jargon, but it's essentially the EU budget period. It runs according to 7-year cycles. The last one kicked off last year in 2021. So if you start getting involved now, the learning that you have, the connections that you build, the projects that you have, it'll run according to 7 years. So essentially these programs will stay relatively the same over these 7 years. Then when the budget period changes again, there can be new things can be introduced, and there's a little bit of learning involved. Even for those of us who are very active in EU projects, there's a bit of learning, but it's a good time to start getting involved at the beginning of a budget period, because you get the benefit of kind of learning about these programs alongside everybody else. So thank you very much for that, Damien, and for Christina. I am going to go into the 10 steps soon of how to go about building a partnership, 10 very kind of solid steps of how you kind of practically go about building one. But I just wanted to touch very briefly on why European partnership is important, and why partnership, I suppose, in general is important. Christina touched on it already there, that obviously the vast majority of EU funding programs require some kind of partnership. Not all of them. I'm sure like a lot of the national ones, like the European Social Fund or LEADER, or some other kind of smaller scale ones, or especially at those ones at national level, don't require EU partnership. Also, there are some where you don't necessarily need to cooperate at an EU level, where you can just have national partnerships. I've seen that under programs like the LIFE program, which is the Environment and Climate program, or the SERVE program, which is the Citizenship, Equality, Rights and Values. So there are some exceptions where you don't need that EU partnership, but the vast majority do require it. Or if they don't require EU partnership, they require some kind of partnership, some kind of external collaboration with another organisation. So, and in general, for all European projects, even if they don't specifically require an EU project partner, you know, a partner from another European country, you do want to build in that EU dimension in some way, because they'll usually explicitly ask you in the application, why is this a European project? And why isn't this something that you could just do nationally? So you'll need to kind of prove that EU dimension. So even if they don't specifically require you to have EU partnerships, having one can help to demonstrate why this is a pan-European project. So there's that kind of thing. Obviously, then there's the opportunities now with Ireland being that kind of main English-speaking country. There's opportunities to learn and to innovate and to network build, as Damien outlined there, everything that they were able to share. I think you said steal, but we'll say share and borrow and learn from your partners is obviously very important. But the other thing that I think is really important is that partnership is the right way to go about creating impact and making meaningful change. There's actually this model that some of you might have come across before. I actually took it from a European program, one of the Interreg programs for the North Sea region. So this is the one that Ireland is in, but the Interregs all use a similar approach. They've started calling it this Quadruple Helix approach. It can also be called a kind of engage approach. I've seen different terminology for it. But it's an innovation and collaboration model that is citizen/end user led, that incorporates that perspective. It is useful in the innovation process where citizens' needs are central. So basically, you know, up until it used to be the triple helix, where it was public authorities/government working along with industry and along with academia to affect change and to make an impact, to kind of create solutions to problems. And they almost forgot about the end user, about the actual citizen, the people whose lives that they're trying to improve. So now they've come out with this Quadruple Helix thing, which is kind of illustrates that all of these stakeholders are essential parts of the puzzle. If we're going to tackle climate change, if we're going to tackle injustice or inequality, or even trying to solve simple problems at local level, you need a little bit of all of this working together in order to create that change. So partnership is, you know, even beyond the fact that, you know, there's funding in it, there's opportunities for learning, there's opportunities to obviously access funding, all of that kind of thing. You know, even beyond that, it's also the kind of right way to go about doing things, is to bring in all of the relevant stakeholders working together to actually solve the problem. And this is something that the EU is very much favouring more and more in different programmes now. And this is really good news for our sector, because it means that there's now a place for us in programmes that effectively excluded civil society and NGOs before, like the research and innovation space. Like there barely used to be any space there for civil society or for community and voluntary groups. But now more and more, whether it's universities or higher education, academia, they're being kind of pressured to, you know, if you're researching a societal challenge, there should be a citizen group or a representative group of who the end user is, that's kind of represented in the consortium. So it's this kind of thing of nothing about us without us. If you're trying to come up with a solution that is to serve some particular group of the population, they should be involved in the decision-making design process. It's just good practice. So that's just something I wanted to kind of touch on there. And it kind of factors into when you're designing consortiums yourself, it's about thinking about representing different sectors and stakeholders. So maybe looking at the Quadruple Helix and seeing, is there different, now not every consortium is going to perfectly, you know, follow that formula. There's lots of different ways of going about it, but it's worth kind of asking yourself these questions when you're putting together a consortium. Am I representing different sectors, different stakeholders? Am I getting a diversity of perspectives here? Are there different skills and expertise that these people can bring? So Christina touched on it, like, you know, if you want to build a project where, like for example, the Wheel, we wanted to build an e-learning platform. We have no idea how to do that. So we needed to bring in expertise of people who've done this before, or people who have some kind of, they're digital specialists or whatever. So it's about looking at what it is you want to do and what skills and expertise you need to bring in order to deliver on the project. For EU perspective, the geographical spread can be very important. So you don't want something it depends on the program. Obviously, if it's an Interreg program where they define what region you're pulling from, then that's fine. But in general, you're looking to have a diversity of different member states. You don't usually want it too Western Europe-y. You want to have a few from the south and the east as well to show that you've got lots of different perspectives. And it's about kind of sharing learning across the different member states, regardless of where they are in their journey of developing. And then things like reach and capacity. So not every partner has to have all of these things, but every consortium should consider all of these things in how it's designed. And I just wanted to give you a couple of examples. So as I said, I started off managing several different European projects for a small nonprofit before I ever came to the wheel. One of them was this whole project EU. So this was a project, it was to do with healthy active living for older people. And it was specifically about equipping kind of informal carers with kind of basic skills around promoting strength and balance and physical activity as part of their everyday home care. So you can see this was a very diverse consortium. So they kind of did it by the book. They had 2 universities. One was a sports science department of a German university. The other was she was an internationally renowned expert on exercise for physical activity for older people, and she was based in Israel. So that was an example of where we were able to demonstrate that we needed this partner from outside the EU in order to complement this consortium. So she was brought in with special exceptions, essentially, to be part of this consortium. We had 1 private home care company, so a little bit of private sector. We had 1 nursing college, 1 technical college, and 2 NGOs. So you had lots of different, you had a bit of private sector, a bit of academia, a bit of the NGO kind of sector, no public authorities, but other consortiums might have something like that. The Scope project was the first project I wrote for the wheel. This was a little bit different. The point of the project was to build an educational platform for NGOs, for third sector organizations, and it was about kind of reach and reaching as many third sector organizations as possible. So I picked the wheel and 3 other sector representative bodies from different organizations or from different EU member states, a VET provider who had done kind of that digital stuff before and could maybe help us with the validation of learning, because we weren't sure how to go about that and they'd done it before, and a technology partner. Many of you might be aware of Untitled. So they were a technology partner. And again, I was able to justify having 2 Irish partners in this project because I balanced it out with more EU partners. And I was able to justify that Untitled were kind of unique in that they were both digital specialists and an NGO kind of civil society group themselves. So they had like a special kind of perspective that they could bring into this project. And then a more recent one that we have is Foundations for Sector 3. So it was the wheel, another representative body, one other representative body, it should be body, not bodies, a VET provider, actually the same one from the Scope project. So you'd often find that if you get on with partners, you use them again and again in projects, and a university. So these are the types of, bringing in different stakeholders and things like that. So with that, we'll move on to our 10 steps now. And it shouldn't take too long to do these, and we should have plenty of time then at the end for questions. We'll have at least 10 minutes. So if you have any questions throughout, just throw them in the chat box there and we'll get to them. But she already gave some kind of great ideas for how to connect and reach out, whether it's nationally or at EU level when we were doing the Menti earlier. You were 100% right. Sometimes when people ask me about building European partnerships, they imagine that there's some kind of secret key. It's not really any kind of secret. It's as transparent as what Damien was saying, your own suggestions about how you go about building partnerships nationally. It's about networking, it's about reaching out, it's about building, joining networks, things like that. So there's no kind of secret process, and there's no exact science to this, but these 10 steps are what I always try to follow when I'm building a consortium, and it helps me feel, I suppose, that I'm not missing something vital. So it can be helpful for those of you who are either new or looking to kind of be a bit more formulaic about how you go about this. So the first thing is the concept note. So for those of you who are at our last training, I think which was last month, around designing your EU project, you'll remember this template. So this is what you would have done during that design stage to kind of translate your idea, the idea that you have for a project, into an actual project where you have to break it down into things like working title. Your action is what funding program you're going to go for, the duration, the deadline of the program, so the duration of the project, which is usually around 2 years for European projects, your budgets, your priorities addressed. Again, in the last session, we would have talked a lot about how, you know, your priorities, that the priorities of the funder that you're addressing in this project have to be very clear. There's no point doing it if there isn't a clear link between your project and what the funder wants to achieve. Your partners, and you might list what kind of partners you're looking for here if you haven't got many confirmed, your target groups, your rationale, all of that kind of thing. So it summarizes your project, and it gives, it serves two purposes, I suppose, in that it translates your project from an idea into, you know, a solid thing where it has all of the key components that allow people to understand your project better, and it serves as a communication tool. So when you're reaching out to partners, you can send them this rather than trying to explain your entire project in an email, which I would avoid. That becomes very busy and long. You can use this as an attachment. It prompts you to give them all the relevant information. There's no point telling them all about the project but not mentioning anything about the deadline or the budget, which is what they really need to know a lot of the time, or talking about deadline and budget but not giving them any detail about what the project is about. So it kind of prompts you to give them the right information. And I suppose with this, the main tip at this point is to kind of start as early as you can, particularly if you're doing this for the first time. The further ahead that you can do this, the better, because the more time you have, it kind of becomes a luxury. You can decide if you want to work with partners. If you don't get a good feeling out with partners, you're more free to say, okay, no, I don't really want to, you know, we're going to go a different direction. You can change, you can adapt your idea, all of that, whereas everything is harder when you're under pressure. So once you have your concept note and that's formalized, and you can watch back the previous training if you want a bit more information about how to design your idea. But once you have that, it's about reaching out. So as I said, keep it brief in the email itself and put your content in the actual concept note because it makes it easy for people. Look for actual people if possible. So as Damien was saying, and as Christina said before, you know, whether it's networks that you're part of, and Damien's right, there's a network for everything. There used to be a European network of network associations called ENA that the Wheel was part of. I think it's gone now, but that's an example. But yeah, if you're looking through networks and there's just lists of organizations and you think, oh, they look interesting, and you click in and you read a bit about them, rather than just going to their contact form, have a look through their website and see, can you find the actual person who looks like they might be responsible for projects in this organization. So if somebody was coming to the Wheel website and they were looking through our staff list and they saw me, they'd probably imagine I was in charge of European projects, so they'd reach out to me directly rather than going to info@Wheel. So say whether you're finding people through networks or you're finding people through past projects that you've found in your online research and you're looking through their organizations, if you can at all, try and reach out to actual people. But obviously, if you can't, it's not available, but try to do that and address them directly. Explain how you found them, give them a very specific call to action, and don't be shy. The main thing that people are worried about when I say to them, you know, just reach out, is they're like, oh, what if they don't understand me? Like, what if they don't speak English? If they don't speak English, they just won't answer you. If the fact is, if you found them because they're active in European networks, or if you found them because they've done a previous project that you think looks interesting, they probably speak English. I'd be shocked if they didn't. English is the working language of the vast majority of European projects. But the worst that's going to happen is they won't answer you, and that's not the end of the world. There's an actual example of an email that I sent to this lady, Mary Rose, who is the director of an organization in Malta. And we actually are collaborating in one project with them that's funded, and they're in our latest project that we just submitted. So that's a screenshot of the actual email I sent to her a couple of years ago now, introducing myself, explaining how I found her through this previous project, explaining that I was in the middle of preparing an application and what kind of partners we were looking for, that I had a concept note and that it would be great to have a Zoom chat with her if she was interested. And as I said, that then led to one funded project and one project that's now in the pipeline. Step 3 then is to kind of scope them out and decide if you're interested. So I'd start with a Zoom meeting. At this point, I usually have a short presentation prepared at the Zoom meeting. It's just the concept note translated into a few slides. It just means, you know, generally I'm having a good few meetings, communicating the same thing over and over to various potential partners. So it's handy just to have it as a few presentation slides. I take this opportunity to kind of ask questions, to get to know them, ask about their capacity and expertise and things like that. Like, a lot of this point is realizing that you're potentially doing them a big favor here by doing the heavy lifting in writing a project. As the coordinator or as the main project writer, you're going to be doing the vast amount of the work. So it's very much you kind of interviewing them as opposed to the other way around. So obviously everybody's very nice and respectful and friendly, but just remember, you don't owe them anything just by having a meeting with them. It's your opportunity to kind of get to know them. I put a little red flag there. Do they seem open, communicative and easy to work with? If they don't at this point, when you're just having a chat about the project, you have to imagine, oh God, what are they going to be like, you know, down the line if this is actually funded? So use this as an opportunity to get a feel for somebody. Even if I have a great feeling about somebody when I meet them, I never give any promises. I'm just like, okay, well, look, it's very, very nice to meet you. We're going to go away and we're going to have a chat about it. I have to talk to my manager about it and all that kind of thing. And I'll come back to you and let you know what they decide. And that kind of gives everybody a bit of leeway in terms of, you know, you're not promising anything or committing to anything at this point, and you don't owe them anything at this point. It's just a chat. Not every meeting is going to lead to projects, no more than at national level. If you do decide that, right, we really like them, we want to go ahead with them, you can kind of send them an email about that. And at this point, there's a few things you need to gather. It depends on your approach. I tend to use to gather project-specific information about them. So some people collaboratively write the application. They put it into a Google Doc, for example, and everybody kind of populates their bits. It's really your personal preference. There is no right way of doing this. I tend to like to write the bulk of the application myself and then assign people certain things. I think it's just a little bit more organized and it's easier because it's got a cohesive voice the whole way through, as opposed to, like, I just feel like it gets a bit messy when you've got a million different perspectives all jumbled in together. But I do send them kind of a list of maybe 10 questions where I'm like, you know, I need to know about what is your capacity, including a few kind of staff bios or previous projects that you've done. What is your reach? You'll be asked specifically about your dissemination reach in pretty much any European applications. We need to know, you know, what is their newsletter reach, their social media reach, what networks are they part of, things like that. Your strategic interest. Why is this project interesting to you? What specific expertise do you have? How will you mainstream it once the funding is done? They'll always ask about that in EU applications. So you want to have a look at your application and see which specific questions could I do with some input from my partners, from maybe some stats or figures to do with their country or why it's appropriate there, and then ask them. So I give them, I say, here's some questions. I'd like you to fill in this information and get back to me by X date. And that means I have something that I can kind of pull on then as I'm filling out the application to make sure I'm interweaving, that it's not just the wheel this and Ireland this and Ireland, because that's not an EU application. You need to show that it's, you know, everybody's coming together and you've gathered the perspectives of all your partners. And then obviously there's technical info. This would be in the application form, but they'll ask for OID, organizational ID numbers, or PIC numbers, names, addresses, legal reps. Sometimes they'll ask you for the codes of any past projects they have. All of that would be in the application, but I like to kind of lift it out and at this early stage ask for that, because it can take quite a while to assemble all of this information. So the earlier the better. And then if there are any, not completely depends on the European program, but sometimes they'll ask for each partner to sign a mandate or something like that. And again, I just like to start this process really early, just because the last thing you want to do is scramble around for mandates coming up to the deadline. And if at all possible, I try to bring in a colleague to do all of this information gathering so I can focus on the actual writing while they gather all of this stuff and monitor it. Looking at step 4, then you're looking back at your concept note. Of course, you want to approach them with a very solid project idea. If it's too vague and if it's too up in the air and you haven't really defined it yet, it's not very inspiring for them, because they're like, what even is this? You know, like, this isn't clear. I don't know what you want from me. And also there's the risk of everybody weighing in and saying, oh, well, we want to do this and we want to do that. And then you end up with this kind of a hodgepodge project that doesn't have a clear vision. So I like to go in with a really clear vision of what the project is, but also be open to their ideas. You want to inspire kind of buy-in and joint ownership over the project. That's very important, that they feel that they're getting something out of it. So I always kind of welcome, like, is there anything specific that you'd like to include here? Or, you know, is everybody, you know, does anybody have any ideas? So this is the point where you can kind of tweak and finalize depending on different people's preferences and ideas. You can kind of put in those tweaks and ideas, allocate your roles. Maybe after you've chatted with people, you've realized, oh, these people would actually be really strong at this, and I'm going to give this role to this person instead. Whatever it is, you know, allocate your roles, finalize your activities and your ideas, get agreement from everybody before you start writing. Is everybody happy now if I proceed with those roles and these activities? And again, red flag at this stage is if you've got partners who aren't adding anything, as I think Damien said, they're just these kind of add-on because, you know, we need to tick a box. You know, it's very important that everybody has a clear role. Everybody has an important role to play in the project, and that they understand it, and that they can deliver on it, and that they're excited about it, that they're invested in it. Co-writing, Damien talked about Google Docs there. I find that really good, but Teams is another option as well. I always create an editable version of the application. It depends on the different European program. They use different systems but often the systems that they use for writing, like, you know, the online portal or whatever, they're not very friendly for editing and writing. So it's just easier to create a Google Doc version of it. That kind of balance of joint responsibility, it's a totally personal preference, as I said, but sometimes I feel it just gets a bit chaotic when everybody's writing at once. I'd rather write the majority of it and then clearly indicate, you know, X partner, I need you to do this, and Y partner, I need you to fill in this kind of thing, and then give everybody the chance to review it and read over it and correct things and input things and things like that. So I think having one clear leader for me is important, but, you know, you might feel differently. There is a project writing training. We talked about it at the beginning there, but we'll go more deeply into how to actually give good answers to questions and make sure you're getting as many marks as you can. So we'll go through that at the next session. Timeline, you can use just a Gantt chart. I always like to use this. I know whether it's me that I'm very visual or whatever, but I always like to use this quite visual timeline. You can see this one is quite old. It's actually from that whole project EU. So it's very old. It's like 2014. And you can see it's a bit old fashioned because it uses the IOs. They used to be called intellectual outputs. They're called work packages now. But anyway, to me, this is a bit friendlier than a Gantt chart because you can really visualize, you know, the time frame of the project. But, you know, having some kind of a timeline, whether it's Gantt chart or something else, can be really helpful so that people definitely understand what they're doing and when, and what the time commitment is and when their meetings are and things like that. Similarly, this again is quite an old-fashioned screenshot from a budget because it still has the IOs. That's all out of date now. But anyway, spend some time building a proper budget builder Excel sheet, because you might have to tweak with the budget quite a lot. You know, you might have to add in a bit of extra travel there and a few extra working days there. So spending some time having a good, you know, maybe roping in some help from a colleague or whatever to build a good budget spreadsheet, because that's something that you'll circulate to your partners. They might feedback and have questions or want to add things or want to adjust something or other. So make sure that you've got a good budget and you're circulating that. Then 8, it's about circulating drafts. So once you've had your first full draft, you've got your draft, your timeline and your budget, you need to give people time to kind of read them and feedback on them. So it's that editable format cloud again, so Google Docs, for example. Let them give the feedback, circulate a second and then final draft. That's what you're always hoping for, is to have time for 2 drafts. Sometimes I don't have time for 2 drafts when I'm doing it, but you aim for that. Your final draft should definitely have your final budget, and it's basically asking people, are you happy with this? Is this okay? This is what we're going to submit. Last chance to say anything, and then allow time for proofreading. And then before I actually press send, I do step 9, which is again just that last opportunity to speak now or forever hold your peace. As in, I'm about to submit it, it's proofread, it's ready to go, I'm about to press submit. Are you okay with your activities, your responsibilities, the budget, the timeline, any other expectations? And at this point, you can consider getting it in writing. It really depends. We usually don't. We usually just kind of do a more informal agreement where we just kind of list the activities. They have to click that yes, they do understand them, and then sign it at the bottom. Sometimes we don't even do that. Other organizations, they want an actual memorandum of understanding. So it really depends. I suppose it depends on the scale of the project as well. But that is an option anyway, if it's something to consider at this point. Yeah, and then step 10 is submission. So you want to submit it properly and early. For EU projects, you usually don't have any other option but to use their portal. I know sometimes with national, going to trainings where it was national funders, where they had people, you know, submitting it in attachments to emails, even though they clearly asked them to put it into the portal and all that kind of thing. I don't think you can really do that with EU projects. They only really give you one option, but just make sure that you are submitting it properly. If you can at all, and I know it's harder, easier said than done, but try and do it early, particularly with the EU. The systems are not very friendly. They can be quite technical, and sometimes when you're filling in things, you know, you tick a box and a new little bit appears. So it can be a bit of a headache. And also their systems crash quite a lot, you know, and they end up extending deadlines and things like that. So it's just easier. It's just a bit of, you know, saves yourself a bit of a headache if you do it early, so that you're not under pressure in case you do have a technical issue, and so that you're not with that last flurry that might crash the system, you know, where the system is under a lot of pressure. If you get it done early, you'll have a smoother time trying to do it. And once it's done, then you're circulating your submitted version. So that the general thing to do would be to kind of circulate around, just say, hi everyone, here's the submitted application. We'll keep you up to date on it. Fingers crossed we'll all be kind of working away or working together very, very soon. So you can see here that the longer you give it to yourself, the better it'll be, so that you're not under pressure. If you're getting a red flag from a partner where you're like, oh, I'm not sure about them, you can remove them and just say, look, you know, we've actually decided to go a different way. You know, you can do that without having to panic that like, oh God, now we're not going to have the partner requirements, you know, so you have time. If there is, you know, if you find out there's a bit of a technical issue, you're not panicking. So anything you can do to try and reduce that kind of level of panic and pressure, it just means you'll have a kind of smoother time of it. There's no way of 100% eliminating the risk of external collaboration with partners. That's, you know, it's inherently risky. That's what projects are. But if you kind of do all of this due diligence of, you know, circulating drafts, meeting with them, discussing them, giving yourself a chance to kind of get to know them a little bit, not including them if you don't have a good feeling about it, you don't owe them that. So, you know, you can decide not to, if, you know, giving them a chance to weigh in, giving them very clear options to, you know, that they can't turn around to you when the project is funded and say, oh, well, we didn't know we had to do this, and this isn't, you know, we need more money. You know, if you go through all of these steps, there isn't really anything they can say that, you know, they didn't know what they had to do, or, you know, it just gives you that option that the chances are you'll be fine, your partnership will be fine. It's never 100% guaranteed, but it's a, you know, by following all of those steps, you know that you've covered all the bases that you possibly can to safeguard against the risks of partnership, but you can never completely get rid of them, obviously. As I said, it can, this is where now you wait once it's submitted. It can take a few months from when you submitted it to find out if you're successful. The EU is quite slow when it comes to assessing applications. And then even then, it can take a couple of months by the time you have your grant agreement all ironed out and sorted. So it can take, you know, definitely 8 or 9 months at times to get a project underway. If it's successful, obviously it's about kicking off your project management phase, and we will cover that, I think, in a future training. Damien touched on it there really well about the whole, you know, having ground rules for communication and, you know, kind of good practice, getting to know each other, all that kind of stuff. We can definitely look at that in a future training. I think it would be really worthwhile. But that's a whole other training, really, so we won't go on about it too much. If you're not successful, don't be discouraged. It's still a very worthwhile process. You know, you've still got that benefit now of, they usually give you some pretty good feedback, so then you can take that into consideration, hopefully develop your application further, and then resubmit again. I wouldn't, you know, just forget about it. usually there's always an option to resubmit with some improvements. So it's never a wasted effort. There's always, you know, even the connections that you've made are useful. As I said, in the next session, we will look at good practice in terms of actually writing the content of your application. So we'll zone in on questions and how to make sure that you're getting the max points from each question, and little kind of tips and tricks for grant writing, and making sure that you're avoiding common mistakes and, you know, communicating your project well. But for now, that's all we have in terms of our project or EU partnership building content. But I see one question already. If you have any other questions for myself or Damien, if Damien is still here, I know he had to go to another event. But if you have any questions, feel free to either put up your hand and we can go to you, or pop them in the chat. But somebody asked, what is a PIC? The PIC is a participant identification code. When you register for yourself, when you register yourself on the EU funding and tenders portal, your organization, when you register an organization, I should say, not yourself as an individual, but when you register your organization, you get a PIC, a participant's identification code, that identifies your organization essentially. So you should have one PIC code for your organization. There's also now, they introduced these things called OID numbers, which are organizational ID numbers. It's my understanding was it was supposed to replace the PIC, but essentially in some of the more modernized, streamlined programs, they use the OID, and for the older programs, they use the PIC. Both are, when you register your organization, they're both just there. So just put in whatever they ask for, they're both in the same place. So you can just put in whatever they ask you for in the application. Any other questions? Feel free to just throw up a hand. We have a few minutes. Okay. We can leave it there if nobody has any questions, and we'll just finish a few minutes early. I know that my colleague Emily has a slide just with, if you wanted to get out or get in touch and ask more direct questions about your organization, we have information there about how you can reach out to us. But are we sure? Well, if you have any other questions, stick up your hand, but maybe I'll let Emily take it from here and just do a little recap and our supports.
Yep, no problem. So just to recap, today we covered how to successfully build an EU partnership. And at the next training on the 12th of May, we will cover writing your actual application, circulating drafts with your partners and getting sign off from them, and then finally submitting your application. So as Christina mentioned earlier, we have the recordings of our Intro to EU Funding Programs training and our Designing Your EU Project training on our YouTube channel. And we'll have today's training up there as well. And you can sign up to the 12th of May training on writing your funding application at this link, which we will send on to you with all the slides and the recording. And just in terms of supports available from Access Europe, so we provide updates on all the EU funding programs that we've mentioned today, like Erasmus Plus and Creative Europe, and all the deadlines that they publish. We do that primarily through our free monthly newsletter, which you can sign up for at this hyperlink here. And we also kind of post daily updates on our Twitter page, which you can follow here. We have free trainings and events, obviously. So just make sure you're signed up to our newsletter so you get all the updates on those and you can register for them. We're also happy to provide one-to-one advice. If you'd like to meet with us about project ideas you have, we can give you advice on which program it might fit under and signpost you to the appropriate contacts and just give you application review, project management tools and things of that nature. And then we also try to host networking opportunities, both locally in Ireland and at the EU level. And we do that through our EU Project Managers Network, which you can sign up to, and through our Access Europe Partnership database. And you can always get in touch with us at europe@wheel.ie as well.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you for that, Emily. I can see, Fiona, you have a question there. We can go to you.
Just a quick one. What level of due diligence are we allowed to go through, if we're a partner or lead? Because we've had an experience recently of 4 months work and there was a lead organization, and he pulled the entire project about 10 days before the submission date.
Okay. So when you say, is it in terms of like vetting potential partners that are reaching out to you?
Yeah. And even if we do join the consortium, we allowed to sort of find out more about the other partner organizations.
Absolutely. Like, it's entirely up to yourself, and there is no, I suppose, EU directive or guidance specifically about how you as an organization should go about joining partnerships or anything like that. It's entirely up to yourselves, and for very active organizations, they might well have a kind of internal policy about this. So it's worth having kind of, I suppose, you had that experience, and that's unfortunate. It does happen sometimes. It happened to us one time as well with a big Interreg project, and it was just the co-funding was too much, and we had to pull it in the end after a lot of work. Yeah, it's one of those things where you're absolutely at liberty to kind of sit down as an organization and say, look, well, we've had this experience. From now on, if we're entering into a partnership, we want to know X, Y, and Z about all of the partners. We want to do, whatever it is, we want some kind of a guarantee of X or Y. You have to, I suppose it's important to be flexible and reasonable in that whenever you're engaging in projects, there's always risk. Things can fall through, global pandemics can happen, people can leave the organization or get sick. You can never, as I said before, you can never 100% eliminate the risk, but you're perfectly at liberty to put in some guidelines to kind of safeguard against time wasting. And I suppose it's up to individual organizations to sit down and say, well, what is our criteria for even considering entering a partnership? And certainly if I was reaching out to partners and they were like, look, this sounds great, we're interested. However, we have a process where, if we're thinking about entering in projects, we like to know X, Y, and Z, and we like to have a meeting, we like to discuss this. I'd be totally fine with that. If anything, that would reassure me, because I'd be like, right, these people have a very robust kind of process in place for vetting their partners. So there's no set policy, but you're entirely at liberty to kind of formulate one for yourself. And I would say it'd be very good practice.
Okay, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
No worries, no worries. Any other questions before we finish up? Right. Okay. Well, as Emily said, you can absolutely reach out to us at europe@wheel.ie. We're happy to we do offer one-to-one meetings if you want to discuss your EU funding development and what goals you might have. If you have specific ideas for projects, especially, we can help you find the home for your project within all of the different European programs, because it can be quite daunting if you're new to it. So you're not on your own with it. There's loads of help and support there. We're very happy to help you. But it's very important that we thank everybody. So thank you to Christina and Emily for organising and for guiding us through today's session and finishing up there. And a huge thanks to Damien as well for your excellent case study. I think it's really inspiring to see an organisation that's really kind of utilising this funding and making the most of it. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you at the next one. Great. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.